Wow, 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 wow. Okay. Reprogramming your limiting. Whoa, hold on. Reprogramming your mind is what we're going to talk about today. And it is such an important preface that we do here that you, in this moment, pay attention to your thoughts. And all throughout this call, pay attention to your thoughts and ask yourself, what emotions are charged from these thoughts? Oh, I gotta get this done. Or this person hasn't texted me back, or I gotta get that thing. Whatever it is, think about how those thoughts emotionally charge you and make you do something. Like what made you come onto this live here? That's what I want you guys to think about. This is gonna be the gym for your mind. It's really what we do here. It's the gym for your mind, the gym for your pockets, the gym for your emotional regulation, your wealth, your environment, your wisdom.
We call it the brain gym.
We call it entrepreneurial church, entrepreneurial therapy. That's what we do here, guys. And we're ready to rock. Andrew, you and I, we're not the men that we are now. We were a lot more insecure years ago. You and I both did not come from rich backgrounds.
Right.
But we're doing pretty good.
Yeah. Doing all right.
So I say that because when we are speaking about this topic right here, anyone, no matter where you are, can develop this concept of reprogram your mind and start to get yourself in a very confident state. And that state stays with you and is consistent with your character for the rest of your life. That's a big promise. I'm going to throw to you.
Big one. Cool. Well, let's start out. By the way, good to see everybody on. How are we going to cover today? What can they expect to learn or take away?
We are going to break down the exact how of how to reprogram your mind step by step, how we've done it. We're going to talk about the concept of like, okay, how does that even work? Guys, I get it. You say all the time, you are who you think about all the time. But what does that even mean? How do we attract good and how do we attract bad? Like, what does that even mean?
Today won't just be a series of quotes that you've heard before. Today's going to be our experiences. And Leo, when I met you, I didn't realize how much my thoughts affected everything. And then I would just be sitting like thinking of something. Oh, crap, I need to do this thing. I need to do this thing. And I had a lot of negative self-talk when we became friends. And you would be like, Andrew, why are you stressing? And I'm like, I'm stressing? You're like, yeah, it's all over your face. And awareness was the first thing you helped me realize was being aware of my thoughts. And that was something I had not really, I've heard it talked about that thoughts are important, but never in a way of saying, wait a second, like there's an actual pattern where I'm thinking things all day. You're thinking, what is it? Like we think of tens of thousands of thoughts every hour. And if your brain is thinking of hundreds of thousands of thoughts every few hours, every day or two, and if your thoughts are now training what you're doing, our thoughts are pretty darn important. And I never took a formula to sit down and say, what am I thinking? And how do I change the thing I'm thinking? And so I changed my relationship with money. And I done that by thinking broke thoughts and changing them to wealthy thoughts. And so I knew it in that regard, but I never realized like our weight, our health, our everything, the trips we take, the life we live, the family we create, everything around us stems from what are we thinking about. So what's the first things you helped me do to start adjusting my thinking that was off?
It was the awareness that, Andrew, you're stressed. Why are you stressed? Why are you bringing this stress onto me?
Yeah.
By showing it everywhere. And because you didn't notice that you were doing that. Right? We like to pour into other people in the good and the bad by dumping all your stress onto people. Not you, but that's how it was.
Right.
And we don't realize how much that has an effect on us. When we have such negative people around us that complain and complain and complain, we start to complain ourselves. So we start to realize how impressionable we are as human beings.
Yeah.
And when you finally get that hit of like, okay, I know how important my mind is and all these negative thoughts that I have. If we take a look at all the 30,000 thoughts that I had in the past 2 hours, how many of them were negative? How many of them were positive, right? Your thoughts, they create your feelings, and your feelings turn into action, and action turn into results. We know that for an absolute fact. Like, that is the definition of the direction of our brain and the direction of our thoughts. Our thoughts create our reality. But I always would hear this from individuals. I learned this from Tony Robbins. He taught me all these concepts that we're about to taught you, and we've done it in our own lives and kind of put our own twist to it. But if our thoughts create our feelings, what does that mean? I asked you guys in the beginning of this, think about, let me say this for a second. Pause, and let me ask you, what are you thinking about right now? What is on your mind? And as you start to think, you're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Okay, what is on my mind? And then you start to pay attention to those thoughts, and you become very aware that those thoughts create feelings within you. You might have a feeling of motivation because you should have called back that person, and then that drives you to take action. You say, "Oh, I forgot to do that." I used to see Andrew do this all the time because I would almost read his mind because he'd be like this. He'd start thinking, and he'd be like, "Oh," and then he'd take his phone, he'd call someone, he'd make some money, right? And the point I'm going at here is the awareness of understanding that whatever you're thinking about, like, oh, I have to call this person, creates a feeling of motivation, which creates an action, which creates a result.
Right.
But now what we're going to guide you through is how do we strategically make sure that those massive thoughts are working for you, not against you, in every single format of each of those thoughts. So we're going to break this down. So go ahead, Andrew.
Well, first off, where do you think our thoughts come from? Where right now is a lot of people's thoughts originating?
The thoughts come from their experiences throughout the day and a mix between the now, the future, and the past. And it's hard for us because we got to juggle all three at once.
Yeah.
Right? When you're worried about money, you're looking at both the past and the future. You're looking at, oh crap.
Yeah.
I gotta, we got 10K coming out of the bank account in 4 days. How are we gonna make that happen? And then you're getting mad at yourself. Here's the thing. You're also getting mad at yourself of the past. Like, damn, I should have sold, or I should have bought, or I shouldn't have done this.
Right.
So then you're thinking of two things. So it's like you're holding two things at once and you only have two hands. And then now the present is not there. You're no longer present. You're living in those two worlds.
Right.
So we kind of feel out of mind, out of body a little bit. But the thoughts start to come from either of those two, and that's where anxiety and depression come from the most, right? Depression is the past, not being able to get over the past. And then anxiety is the fear of the future. Mm-hmm. So then we feel those two things like every day in spurts, right? But then when you fall through, and guys, not clinically saying anything, but when you fall too heavily on one side, that's when you have, anxiety. That's when you categorize yourself saying, hey, I have anxiety, I have crippling anxiety or crippling depression, because you're stuck in the past or you're stuck in the future. So that's where thoughts come from, pulling from there, from the past.
That's powerful. Something I think of, and I was just looking up a stat as we was getting started, is years ago, my grandpa was a farmer. He was born in 1914 and had a horse and buggy. And he was so excited when he got a combine years ago. And coming from that background, like from that life, 1914 till now, we're still humans. We still have the same brains, except now we are getting hit with 4,000 to 10,000 marketing messages a day. That's crazy.
Text event to 940-468-7852.
So that was 1 out of 10,000. We have a lot more to get through. For all of you, we're being bombarded. Digital ads, traditional media, mailing. There was emails in excess in 2024 of 361 billion that went out. And
this year?
2024.
2024.
In 2026, 2027, they say it will have increased to closer to 400 billion. That's crazy. The emails that are going out and the marketing messages that are being spread. And every time we see a marketing message, we think something, right? And for me, realizing we can actually take charge of our thoughts. And that's something I noticed from you is you'd be seeing something, hearing something, something would come on, a ad, a media, a song, and you would be like, nope, not accepting that. And it was the first time I ever seen somebody verbally telling their mind, no, not accepting that. Nope, I'm not cool with that message. And it's interesting when you actually start to pattern interrupt yourself and the change that can make. But how did you discover that?
I was a very insecure boy. I did not like how I looked. I didn't like being Asian because I was the only Asian. There was probably two other ones. I was the only Asian in my school, and I was just so insecure about my body. I was insecure about my height. I was insecure about, and I was like 5'1" at the time, right? But I was
Me
insecure.
too. Still am. No, I'm kidding.
I was insecure about a lot of things.
5'9", by the way.
And that insecure stuck with me. And there was no, like, this was before even becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because there's no way I was going to be an entrepreneur, right? With the limiting beliefs that I had. But it started when I came across Tony Robbins, and I started researching his stuff. And I started to learn that you can take a little bit of control over your mind.
Yeah.
So I started looking at myself in the mirror and said, okay, if I can make a choice, hey, I want to be attractive. You're attractive. And then I would hear my mind say, no, you're not. Right? Because that's where my mind was programmed.
Of course.
And then I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And that makes a lot of sense was like 6 months of trying to make sense of it. But for sake of the story, I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. If I want to create an impression in my mind that I am successful or that I'm attractive or that I attract money, then I have to speak it out. But then I have to also beat the old program saying that I'm not successful or I'm not worthy. How do we do that? You slowly chip away. Let's just say it's a program. You slowly chip away the program, boop, 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 through this idea that, yes, I am becoming more and more successful. But it has to be a truth. It has to be a truth. You can't just say, I'm so successful. I'm the most successful man on earth. Because your mind's going to say, you are absolutely not. And you're not going to get over that program. But if you give it a truth by saying, I am becoming more and more successful because you're showing up to this live, because you're reading, because you're going out and you're learning, you're taking courses, you're doing the things. So you can say the truth of I am becoming more and more successful. Maybe you're working out. So I'm becoming more and more attractive. That is a truth. And when you start to look at the old program and you start chipping it away, soon enough, it's this small little program, this small little voice in the back of your head that says, no, you're not. But then all you have to say is, yes, I am. I am becoming more and more attractive. And then what happens is now you just fully believe that you are attractive, that you are successful. And it becomes the way, again, your mind being like a GPS, right? The sum of those thoughts will give you that direction towards where you want to go. So if you're thinking all these thoughts of negativity, you're going to go down a route of negativity. If you're thinking a lot of these thoughts of, hey, I am attractive, I am successful, you're going to go in that direction. It's this balancing act, but chipping away every day at that old programming.
You reminded me talking about the GPS, and we're talking about all the messages we get hit with every day. By the way, that was funny, Bill. That's just how we operate. We're just always in marketing mode. That's what we want for you guys. So you reminded me of the GPS. And years ago, I used to do a prison ministry. For almost a decade, I'd done a prison ministry. And the prison ministry was in just on the other side of Marion, Illinois. And going down to the prison to do prison ministry every Saturday, a lot of times I would be in Indiana doing real estate deals. I would be wherever. So I would just put my GPS and I would drive. I had an old Garmin Square GPS sitting on the dash of my 2003 Buick LeSabre. And so I'd put it in Marion. And growing up, we always had the atlases. We didn't have GPS. We had Atlas. So I'm cool, right? Like I'm on autopilot. So I type in Marion. I hit yes. I'd done it so many times. I'd drive down to Marion. I'd grab a coffee or grab a snack and then drive on down to the prison. So I put in Marion and I drive from Indiana. I drive is a little further that day than usual for some reason. I figured it was traffic. And I drive to what I believe to be Marion, Illinois. And I'm getting closer and I look and says I'm 1 mile from my destination. And I'm like, I don't remember seeing this before. And I look around, it's nothing but fields. And I'm like, this is weird. So it says, take a right. So I'm like, okay, take a right. And it says, you have arrived. And I stop and I look, and there is nothing but fields around. Always before, it took me like to Marion, Illinois. There's car dealerships. There's a few restaurants. I realized that I was in no man land outside of a tiny town, Marion, Kentucky. I'd autopiloted 2 hours in the wrong direction, not even realizing it, listening to my real estate seminar CDs, just in my zone, following the Garmin GPS turn by turn, and wound up. And I'm like, well, crap, Marion, Kentucky, Maryland, can't be that far apart. I put it in. It's like another 2 hours and 20 minutes. And I'm like, crap. So all of this time, I'm driving to what I believe to be the destination, except I had input the wrong state. I had the right name, the wrong state. And I think that's where I was when we connected. I had the wealth part, right? But I didn't realize all the self-talk of I don't look good enough, or I don't feel good enough, or what if they say no, or what if I ever do go broke again, or what if all of these what ifs that were playing in my mind were causing me to just be autopiloting every message. Maybe that's me. Maybe that's me. Well, somebody else said that this wouldn't work, so maybe that won't work. And I was just reactive to every message that I was hearing everywhere.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I said, no, I got to lock in. I got to find somebody who I can trust. And I got to dig in and take accountability and actually start getting these thoughts under control, because we control our minds and not the other way around.
That's really good. You never told me that story.
Yeah.
That's awesome, because not most of us, let me take that back. A lot of people who don't watch this show, they go by autopilot and they allow somebody else to say, this is the direction you should go. And they say, okay. And they start going that direction.
Right.
And years later, they get down on a path, they receive their destination, they realize, hey, this wasn't where I wanted to go. You know, some people on the corporate path, or some people who went a different route and chose a different job, or some people who went a different path and didn't go into entrepreneurship and married the wrong person. Whatever it may be, they went in autopilot and never really took control of their wheel. You know, we know a lot of people who live very passively, and we personally don't trust those people.
Right. They're
good people, most of them. But we don't trust them because the direction of where their life is going is not controlled by them.
Right.
Right. And while I believe, you know, God has a plan for each of us, I think we have that free will to direct our life based on the decisions that we make. But our minds, we make about 35 to 40,000 decisions every single day. Should I drink a water? Should I take a piss? Should I write this down? Should I wake up at this time? Should I do this? All these different thoughts, right? And however your mind is currently programmed are the direction of those thoughts. So if you have a mentality of success and seeking opportunity, out of those 35,000 decisions, they're going to lean towards those of opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's why it makes so much sense why it's like a GPS, right? You will attract opportunity when your mind is programmed that way. And when you think about the red car, right? The red car effect. Let's just say you get a car, and it's your favorite car. What's your favorite car?
Oh, favorite car. I love a beautiful pearl-colored Rolls Royce.
A pearl-colored Rolls Royce.
Yeah.
I don't know how many of those are out there, but let's just say this. Let's try it. So you get a pearl-colored Rolls Royce, and you probably will in the next year. Yeah. And you're gonna start driving it, and I know I'll be in the passenger seat, and I'll see a couple of them, and I'll just look at you, and you'll be like, "Oh, where do these freaking Rolls Royces keep coming from?" And you start seeing one there, you start seeing one there, start seeing one there, and start seeing one there, and all of a sudden we see all these different Rolls Royces, and you're gonna be like, "What the heck is going on?"
Yeah.
But you understand that what we focus on continues to grow, and we start seeing it more. It was always out there.
That happened when I got the 03 Silver Buick LeSabre.
Yeah.
After I got it, it might as well have been a Rolls Royce. It was my first car. I loved that thing. And I'm driving it, the 3.8, beautiful, perfect running car. It'd go like 130-ish. It was fun. And I called it my Granny Mobile. And as soon as I got it, I promised, like 400 other people in our little town of 400 people in Belle Rive, Illinois, went and bought the same car the same day, because the next day I went out and drove it, they were everywhere. And that's exactly what happened, is what you're describing, the red car effect.
Yeah. So our minds, when we drill it onto something, when we pay attention to something, it starts to grow. That starts to come more into our lives. It's called our reticular activating system. And it becomes our brain's filter. Our brains can look at so many things, as we said, 35,000 decisions. But when we start to focus and drill in on something, it filters everything else out and we focus on that one thing. This is the beautiful thing, guys, that when you can start to implement this strategy of understanding your RAS, your reticular activating system, you say, I want to see more opportunities, or I want to meet more of people who are like-minded that have purpose-driven values. All of a sudden, your reticular activating system gets to work and say, okay, I'm going to look for those people. They were already there, but now it's like, boom, I see you, I see you, I see you. And you're having these conversations with people. And again, your mind's saying, okay, this is the type of person I want, because you drill down on finding purpose-driven individuals. Now, what happens on the other hand is if you're so negative every day where you wake up and you're just like, I don't want to be up today. Right. And your brain starts to drill in this idea that you don't want to be awake. You want to have a good day, but your mind is saying differently. I hate this. I hate this. I hate that. This is a terrible day. It's such a terrible weather. And your mind is being filled with all these things. What happens is your reticular activating system is focused on the bad. So it's going to give you more of the bad. It's not this random thing where, I don't think God's just going to like plant some bad stuff in your brain. And that's what attracting means. Maybe. Right. I think, and what I've seen after studying this for 4 years, is that when our brain is drilled down on the filter of such, on the filter of bad, it will give us more, because there's always bad out there and there's always good. Yeah. And if I had a mentality of bad, I could look at the bad of everything. Hey, this isn't fully centered. Oh, how stupid. Right now, this is a terrible tea. It wasn't the best tea I've ever had. It's terrible. Right? Things are always out there. But if you focus your mind on the good and the positive and the gratitude, then all of a sudden I'm like, this is such good tea. We get to have tea today.
We used to play a little game on our way to church as kids. Me and my siblings would be riding in the old 1989 blue van, Chevy, the blue Chevy van, two-tone. And on the way to church, we would have this little game because, we was bored and there was all of us. And so we didn't have video games or Game Boys. I dreamed of having one of those one day, but never got one. It was all right, though. So I am on my way to church, and we'd play this little game. We'd be guessing when we shake each person's hand at church how they would say their day was. So we'd be like, we would get them almost always right, because it was normally the same one. There was always a person who would say, doing awesome. There was somebody else who'd be like, doing good. Another guy, every time, like if you asked them 100 times, 98 of them would be tired. Like it didn't matter the outcome or the answer. There was always the same thing, because that's what they focused on. I don't believe one of them just had way more better days than the other one. I just believe that there was a massively different focus. So what I want to see for everyone that's listening to this is that you're able to start taking away, saying, wait a second, I can literally create my life of freedom. I can literally step into my purpose. I can actually, just through this shift, listening to this show, change everything in my sphere by starting to think differently.
Tony Robbins says, whatever you hold in your mind on a consistent basis is exactly what you will experience in your life. The only thing keeping you from what you want is the story that you keep telling yourself. So what is the story that you guys keep telling yourself? And for example, in my life, I used to call myself broke all the time. Mm-hmm. I don't even like saying the word. It's such a nasty word to me now, right? It's my B word. And I would call myself broke, and it was almost like a thing where I would make fun, like, I'm so broke. How am I going to do that? And what I noticed was when I started to understand my brain and my mind, I stopped saying that forever. Because every time I said I was broke, I was casting a vote towards, hey, yes, I am broke.
Right.
I am the person that cannot, because what is a broke person? They can't attract money. They lose money really easily. They're not a good steward of money.
Yep. They
never have money. And I'm categorizing myself as such an individual. Thank you. And when that happened, I thought to myself, okay, wow, because I called myself broke for so many years, that's why every opportunity that came up, I said no.
Right.
Like, I can't do that because I'm
afford
broke,
it. Yeah.
right? And it reminds me of this idea that I used to scream out loud at the top of my lungs, that your brain, your subconscious mind, the mind that really controls everything. And I know yesterday we talked about how you control your mind, but it is you planting into your subconscious mind. But your subconscious mind does not know jokes.
Right.
I think we talked about this before, right? Is that people joke about being broke, or people joke about being X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, your brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what isn't real.
Right.
So if you keep calling yourself broke as a joke, like, no, I can't afford that. Well, your brain doesn't know that you're joking.
Goes to work to make sure you can't.
Your brain goes to work, and it's like, it's so crazy how powerful our mind is. And when we say this, guys, it's just looking and saying, okay, what are all the things that we're calling ourselves and the stories that we're telling ourselves? And how can we just use this time that we have together here to say, okay, let me break through. Let me get past that. And we'll show you a framework in just a moment of how to actually do that. But let's keep going. Let's keep drilling down on this topic.
So there's somebody listening to this and they're going like, cool, right? I hear you guys talking about this. I see you're doing well. Good for you. But they're sitting here going like, what does that even mean? Like, the bank account is not where it needs to be, or the deal flow is not happening, or the job is not going like I want it to, or the family situation is not where I want it. Like, I've got all this crap going on, and that woo-woo stuff sounds nice, but what's the actual thing that I can do? Like, how do I just get up today and say I'm rich, and then I'm rich tomorrow? Like, what's the actual thing that I can start doing to put this to work? What have you and I had done to experience that?
It helps, of course, when we're right here and I can just say, why are you saying that to yourself? But just imagine for a minute, guys, that you, again, take yourself out of you for a day and you're going for a drive with this individual. Okay, really imagine it. Boom. You get out of you and it's both of you now, but both of you have the same mind. Okay, you're going for a drive, and while you're driving, the whole time this person's saying, you smell bad. I don't like you very much. You're not worthy of success. Right?
That was stupid.
Why are you driving like that? Why'd you choose those shoes?
Yeah.
The socks. Why did you choose those? Right? And you start to think about, hey, if I really was to spend a day with myself and it's the person in my mind, how would we be? And before you know it, you're like, I really don't like this person. Like, I
That's a crazy thought. That's a crazy thought. Because you spend 24/7 with yourself.
You spend 24/7 with yourself. And I learned this from the book, The Untethered Soul. And it gave this roommate example. If you were the roommate with you, would you like you? And for me, it was no, I would hate myself. And when I was thinking about that, I was like, wow, I am so mean to myself. And I started to really grasp that. It took me like 6 months to grasp it.
Yeah.
But in those 6 months, I started to pay attention, like how I would talk to myself. And then one day someone just said, okay, hey, this is how you get past that.
Yeah.
You notice how much of an asshole you're being to yourself. What if you can change that? Right? How would you treat your best friend? And I started to get a little bit more clarity. Okay, I wouldn't say those things to my best friend.
Yeah.
Right? Start there. Then I started to be a little bit nicer to myself. Right? And then he said, okay, if you wanna be better in 3 years, healed in 3 years, keep doing that. But if you want to be better in 2 months, start doing this. Look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself what you want to hear, and then listen to the thought that plays. Because that is the awareness. Hey, I am a successful person. And it says, no, you're not, because you lost this money and because this happened. That, at the moment that you shut that brain off, or it doesn't shut off, the moment that you take control over that brain and get awareness over it is the moment that you start to have power over your mind.
But what does that mean? Take control or awareness over that.
You have to understand that does not control you. It's always going to speak. It's always going to say, no, you're not successful. Right? And it's not going to be a one-day switch where you have more positive than negative. It's going to be a 2-month. I say 2-month because sometimes it takes 60 days to really dive deep into this. But for example, if you have the limiting belief that says, I cannot be successful, you have to understand that voice that comes up when you do say, I am successful. And it says, no, you're not. Then you have to invalidate that idea of that thought saying, I'm not successful. You say, why? Why am I not successful?
Right.
Right? And then you start to go down that path. You start to go down this list and these reasons. But then you lay it out and realize how stupid the reasons your mind telling you you're not successful are.
Well, when you're doing these things, though, I remember used to hearing what I would say was woo-woo. I'd hear somebody talking about like positive thinking, right?
Right.
And it's right in the Bible. It's like all over. Like it is a very much a thing that we should pay attention to. But I didn't see it that way. I was broke. I didn't like myself very much. And it was like, I'm rich. Yep. Didn't work. I knew it wouldn't. But when I would look in the mirror and I would be thinking the thoughts, you're ugly. You're a little sloppy. You're clumsy. All of these. Well, then you go and, you're brushing your teeth and then you put your toothbrush down and you knock the toothpaste off the counter. Darn, I'm so clumsy.
Andrew, if you and I wanted to become good friends,
yeah,
but you were an asshole to me, right? I wouldn't just sit here and take the bashing.
Right.
I would start by saying, why do you think that? Why do you hate me? Why do you not like me?
Yeah.
And then you would be like, oh, wow, he actually, I'm not just bullying him anymore. I can actually talk to this individual. And then you'll be a little bit, you'll have a little bit of aggression. I just don't like how you did this and this and this.
Yeah.
And I'll just get to the bottom of it. Like, why do you think that? Like, where did this come from? Oh, it's because of this one thing that I did to you. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. And then we can start building that relationship up. And now, if we want to be friends, we have to talk, right?
Yeah.
We have to communicate. I have to let you know how I'm feeling, my thoughts, and then maybe some compliments and just relationship building there.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm going to treat you well. And then we'll become great friends. That concept is understood in society. Like if we want to become friends with someone who was your enemy before, you got to build it up.
Right.
But they call you crazy if you talk to yourself. They call you insane if you talk to yourself. But that is the only way that I got over the insecurity over myself, is because I literally would walk to church every day during COVID and I would talk to myself. It's like, Leo, how are you? What's going on? What's going on in your world? And I would say all the things I would hate about myself. And I would question it. Like, where does that come from?
Yeah.
And then you start to realize, oh, this came from my parents, or this came from school, or this came from this person. And then you start to validate yourself with empowering beliefs, but you don't even go there yet, right? You have to first just listen to how negative you are first and just come at it.
Awareness.
It comes with awareness.
And that's what I didn't realize, because it was my life. I'm clumsy. Yeah. My shirt tail was untucked. I knew I was sloppy. Like, these things happen and they validate. So then they continue happening and bring further validation. But what if instead I looked in the mirror, and as I would now, I see my shirt tail untucked and I go, no, I'm a neat person. Let me tuck this back in. Right. I look in the mirror and the toothpaste, I knocked it off the counter. I'll have to be more careful next time. I'm a very careful person. Now, I immediately began changing who I was to who I am, but it is a process. And I think that's the part I didn't understand, is that it takes months of habits. Months, you don't decide one day. If you're working, trying to save up money for a house, you don't just say, hey, I want a house today, and 3:00 you have a new house. Like, there's a process. Make sure, if you're buying traditionally, of course, got to make sure your credit report's right. Got to make sure you got the down payment saved. Got to make sure the bank's approved you. Got to decide what house you want. Got to go look at it. Got to go put the offer in. And there's a whole process through becoming the person we want to become. And that's something that you patiently walked me through, because that was something that I was not aware of. And I think when you mentioned awareness, what are you even saying to yourself? I don't talk to myself. Actually, I do all the time. I just wasn't paying attention to what I was saying. I was on my way to Marion, Kentucky, and thought I was heading to Marion, Illinois, and I was awfully disappointed when I got there. But who is this relating to in the chat? I want to see if you guys have conversations with yourself, good or bad, and this is making sense. Give us some feedback in the chat.
One thing I want you guys to do now is ask yourself, If you had all the things that you want, that you're currently desiring, the money, the relationships, the health, the confidence, the charisma, if you had all those things now, how would you act? Really ask yourself that, because this is what got us through. And I asked Andrew this, a couple years back. And you start to realize that this version of yourself that you see, how they would act. And my question is, why can't we start acting as that person now? And the reason is because of all the negative backload that we started this conversation with. We have to first understand and be aware of all the negativity that does hold us back.
Right.
Because of the narrative of being not enough, being broke, being X, Y, and Z. So now, if we can uncover that and say, I'm aware of this person and I challenge this person. I challenge this thought. I challenge you. And then you start to ask yourself, okay, I know where I want to go and I know how he is, or I know how they are. Let me start acting as that person now. Because that allows you to fill in this identity gap of who you are, who you used to be, and who you're becoming.
Right.
Because who you used to be and who you are now is because one day you realize, okay, I'm just going to start doing this. I'm just going to start waking up at this time. I'm going to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But if you had made that decision 3 years back, you still would have closed that gap.
Right.
So we have to close that gap between now where you are and where you want to go, and realize that the gap is just the identity, and saying, I accept being a charismatic person. Or, you know what? I am okay with not being an asshole to myself anymore.
Right.
I'm going to build a relationship with myself. Right. But then it starts closing the gap step by step until finally you just say, I'm going to act as if I am that person. And that's just who I commit to being now. So I know that a lot of this seems sometimes high level, sometimes very basic, but I want to get this message across where they know exactly what to do. What would you say? What did I do for you that allowed you to be such a confident individual?
The first thing for me was awareness.
Okay.
The second thing for me was, and thanks, Kyle. We worked hard on setting this up. Nice to see you. Elizabeth, nice to see you. Les, hello there. So the thing that comes to my mind, the second thing that you helped me with, Leo, was starting to borrow my confidence in an area I was competent and putting that elsewhere. Right? Because I would never get off the phone closing a house deal that made me $50,000 and go, gosh, I suck on the phones. Right? That's not how I talked about myself. No, I do good on the phones. I close deals.
You were very confident always.
That's where my confidence was.
Yeah.
And so when you said take where you are good, somebody is a good father, they're a good mom, they're a good brother, they're good at their job, they're a good software built something you're good at, and you go, okay, I can drive well, I can do this thing well. Let me borrow the confidence there where I know I'm good at, and let me just start utilizing that in other aspects of my life. And of course, borrowing the confidence of our mentors. And in this case, when it comes to my self-confidence, borrowing your confidence. You're like, no, dude, that's nice, right? Tell yourself it is.
Right.
And so for me to start to borrow that confidence from my areas of competency and borrowing your confidence for me sometimes, because sometimes we just need somebody to believe in us when we don't believe in ourselves. Say, no, that looks great. No, you're brilliant, man. That's cool. That's a superpower. Lean into it. And once I started having that conversation with myself, it was no longer a fake. You look good today. No, you're ugly. No, you're unkept. No, you're overweight. No, you're all of these voices telling me other things. It was you look good today. And those voices started to fade. I guess I look okay. My hat's nice. You look good today. Well, my t-shirt, it's got a green square, or triangle, upside down triangle. It's cool. So I start to now think, well, maybe it's not a lie. Maybe I look okay. And so it took me from negative about how I looked, how I thought, the areas I struggled in, and it took me to at least okay with myself. That was the first step. And then it went to eventually, the confidence I now have. And I think it's something that I used to see, just like in finances. I believed if I can just get this many properties, if I can just get this level of thing. And I realized that it is a step every single day, a vote, as you say, toward the person you want to be, toward the financial situation you want. I think the same thing happened for me in realizing it's not that one day I just wake up and I'm this 10 out of 10 confident, perfect, look exactly like I want to look individual. It's every day, hit the gym, move my body a little bit, eat healthy, look in the mirror, be proud of myself. Hey, I might not be exactly where I want to be, but I've come a long ways. I'm proud that I'm taking action. So you can now every day look at yourself, not in a fake sense, because I think that's what I was so against, because I've seen people who would excuse themselves, right? Well, let me just eat 3 more extra large things of French fries. I've been working hard today. That was my excuse when I was heavier. And so I didn't want to be that person. And so I would make sure that I was, quote, hard on myself. But being hard on yourself is different than being just flat out mean to yourself. So you help me to be disciplined, hard on myself in the right way, but to also be kind to myself and have grace for myself, which is a term I'd never heard until you told me one day, dude, have grace for yourself. Look at how far you've came. I go, crap, you're right, man.
Become your own best friend. When I screw up, Andrew has a lot of grace for me. And when I used to screw up, I had 0 grace for myself. And when you think about that, you're like, okay, that's what self-love means. You hear that thrown around so much, but self-love is being almost having a best friend that guides you, because you screw up and your mind doesn't start saying you suck. That's, you're terrible. Your mind says, get back up. You got this. And then all of a sudden we start to look at other areas of our life. Like, hey, what if I had this best friend with me all the time? How much better would I be in the gym, where I have a little bit of anxiety of going to the gym in the beginning? For me, I did. And then I would go, and I had a coach. Who guided me through, and he was like a father figure. And he said, no. Why are you trying to hit the 40s right now? Go with the 5s. That's when I was super scrawny, right? So I would go to the 5s, and he would tell me, like, hey, it doesn't matter that you're doing the 5s. It matters that you're here.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So I started working out, and then I would go from the 5s to the 15s in the bench press, right? 15s to 20, 25 to 30. And I started to get stronger and stronger. And he would always affirm me, saying, you see?
Yeah.
Look at what happened over the past 6 weeks. You just stayed at it and you got so much stronger. Look at yourself in the mirror. And I would look at myself and I'd be like, wow, you're right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Really, really good guy. It was my ex's sister's boyfriend, but he was such a good dude. But he was the one that started to build my mindset in the gym. And because, after a couple of months of working with him, then I started looking at myself in the mirror like, dude, you got this. You're doing good. Get in there. And then I started to transfer that into everything else I was doing.
Right.
But, you start to think about it. You had so much confidence in the financial aspect,
right,
but very limited in the personal aspect. But so you had a flourishing apple tree, right, in financial. But then you didn't plant any seeds in the social and the personal.
Well, I had a limiting belief, and while I am a big proponent of focusing on what's important, I understand that multitasking doesn't always accomplish the thing. I also believe that you can succeed in many categories in life. And back then I had a belief that, everything else just kind of has to go so I can get my finances right. Mm-hmm. And I think that is very much a limiting belief. Now, does maybe this quarter get a little more financial focus, and maybe last quarter or next quarter is more health? Sure, you can focus on that, but that don't mean I have to be unhealthy. It just means that I know I'm in this season, so I'm moving every day and just choosing healthy rather than following my personal trainer's total perfect food routine and hitting the gym for 90 minutes a day. So I think that is a aspect that I found once we started working together, was the fact that you can be successful in many categories in your life. You don't just have to choose one and make that work.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so grateful for the Bible and that you taught me a little bit more about his kingdom, right? Because it acts, at least for me, as a universal truth, where if, in the beginning, I didn't know if a certain direction I was going was the right direction, but now there's scripture to back it up.
Yeah.
And for me, that's where my faith lies. So I say, okay, at least I know that, so I'm going to keep going.
It's a good roadmap.
And for you, I was just here to tell you, like, hey, you can have both of them.
Yeah.
Right. But then that came from my understanding of other people who told me.
Yeah.
So you start to think of the source of truth here, like who is telling us this, and you look at their life and compare and say, would I ever go and switch lives with them? But then when it comes to all of this, like, God talks to us so much about how our thoughts create our reality, and how we have to take care of our body, how we have to eat right, how we have to do all these things. So it acts as a universal truth. So when we know that, we can say, okay, all these limiting beliefs that I can only do one thing at a time, they should be demolished anyways. Right. All these limiting beliefs of lack of money. I mean, in the Bible, there is no lack.
Absolutely.
Right. If I'm understanding it correctly with how I see it, there is no lack. God is a source of supply.
So true.
But it also doesn't mean that, okay, I'm going to do nothing. God, you got me. Right. Because it also talks about you can't be lazy. You have to move. So then it starts to act as this operating system for life that allows us to move. And that's why, when we come onto here, we want to share our truth and what we believe in. But I see how it's all backed by the Bible. It's all backed by that universal wisdom. That has guided our life so much now, where when we come onto here, it's like, hey, it all makes sense. And there's proof to it,
I love that. I think for all of us, we have enormous opportunities that come at us. And there's something I often say, stop chasing and start attracting. And it sounds so like cool, like, oh, that'd be neat, right? And that's how I always believed it. But the reason I say that now is because I experience it. Like, I literally don't chase deals in real estate anymore. I just attract them. I offer value to other people, and people go, oh my gosh, you guys are doing this thing. Here's a deal I have. Would you guys be interested in doing it with us? And all of these things start to happen. I no longer chase, I attract. And that comes in every aspect of our life. I'm no longer tempted to be like, my gosh, I sure want a Twix and a Mountain Dew tonight. Like, to me, it almost sounds repulsive now, because I've been in such a habit of eating healthier and making better choices. And as you start to step in alignment with who you are, with who you're meant to be, and understanding what we've been talking about right here, I think that attracting starts to happen. But what else, Leo, should everyone listening to this know to be able to do to start experiencing that abundance and that blessing and that breakthrough?
This is an everyday thing, with personal development. It is such a personal thing, right? It doesn't have to be, right? We connect on this and we talk about this a lot, but also it was your journey. Right? Your journey is your journey, and you're going to go through your own limiting beliefs, and you have to go through them every single day. I still have limiting beliefs that come up, and I try to bash them every single time they come up. I try to destroy them. I actually enjoy when a limiting belief comes up, because that means I'm getting uncomfortable again, right? For example, going out and going bachata dancing a while ago. I did that because life was becoming a little bit too comfortable. And then all my limiting beliefs were back in that zone. And I was like, yes, I love this adrenaline. Because when you continue to do this, guys, you start to become such a strong attractor. And I'll explain attracting in such a way, because when I started to understand that we can attract, I can close my eyes, I can imagine myself being the person, I can open my eyes and just start being that person now. Sure, I don't have, at the time, I didn't have the house, I didn't have the platform, I didn't have these things, but it wasn't about that. It was the fact that the person I imagined just stood up a little taller, spoke to himself with more confidence, was a more father-like individual for himself and for other individuals, and had some poise, had some depth in him. So I started to say, if I close my eyes and I can see that person, why can't I be it now? Right? Because I could, shake your hand like this. Hey, Mr. Andrew, right? Or I could just, hey, how you doing? right? You can just simply start to practice that. That right there is a habit. It's because I've done that shake so many times
Natural.
that it becomes a lot more natural. And then you start to attract that. But how do you attract that? Don't you think that, I'm going to shake your hand a couple more times. Don't you think that this handshake will gain more respect than, hey, how are you? You know?
Yeah, who wants to do business with, we called that the limp fish. My dad always said any old dead fish can float downstream. We called that the limp fish back in church days.
So you start to see like, hey, if I just started to become that person now, could I attract different people? For me, I honestly, as a young man, I was like, I want to attract more beautiful women. So I was like, what? Okay, close my eyes. Okay, that person has awesome, has a beautiful wife, kids, and throughout his journey had a lot of beautiful women. I was like, okay, cool. Let me start being like him, which was a confident, charismatic individual. And I had so much motivation behind having beautiful women. So I was like, let me just do that. And then I started to become very charismatic. And all my limiting beliefs started to go away because I had such a want of like being that guy.
Yeah.
But then within 2 years, I went from being very insecure to being incredibly confident in everything that I do, because when you become very confident in one area, you can take that seed, plant it in another area. And you can take that seed, plant it in another area. And then those seeds, they don't happen overnight. So it still has to be a month by month process where boom, now the apple tree hatches. You can have all the apples you want.
Apple trees hatch. That's a new one on me. I like that. No, that's really good, Leo. I think it's something that as you're listening to this, my prayer is you take away. Like I can literally just start taking action today to vote toward the person I desire to become, to be the person of wealth, to be the person who takes the trips that you dream of taking, to be the person who sustains your family like you want to be the person who goes on international trips and really just starts to live your purpose. Because that's ultimately when you're walking in alignment, everything becomes so much more pleasant, so much more fun. And when you're no longer chasing, it doesn't feel like work because you're just being. And I think that's something I wish I would have known sooner, would have been to focus less on doing and focus more on being, because the fun is in the being rather than doing the thing. Because if I can be the person that you just described, be the man who has a beautiful wife and a family, to be the man who has built a beautiful business, to be the person of wealth and attract it, that's so much better of a life than always chasing, which is always coming from a mind of lack rather than a mind of abundance.
My mind was going through a lot of different things. What I want you guys to do, guys, before we hop off, is write this down. The first step is awareness. When you become aware of the energy of your thoughts, energy meaning is it positive or is it negative, right? The energy of your thoughts, awareness, then you're just going to reframe that. If you call yourself currently not enough, how do I start to reframe that to say, hey, I am amazing just the way I am, or I'm becoming more and more XYZ. I'm becoming more and more amazing. I'm becoming more and more successful. And as you do that, you just visualize, close your eyes. What if you were that person who was incredibly successful? Close your eyes. Do you see that person? Can you see that person? When you do, now you start to act as if, and it's not to fake yourself as the individual, but you know that if that person's charismatic, you can be charismatic now too. What does a charismatic person do? They smile more. They show interest, right? They shake hands a little bit stronger. They just do those things. Okay. Then the repetition of as you're now doing these things, shake my hand. Okay, boom. That's why I'm a confident individual, right? Because I just got a data point right there of shaking a hand strong, right? That's why I'm a confident individual. Now you have so many tally points, so many votes towards that person that you want to be. You do that towards everything that you want to do. You do that, this task of awareness, reframe, visualize, act as if, and repetition to whatever it is that you want to be. And then you start to identify as that individual, and then you start to act as that. And then it's not even acting anymore. It's just how you are. That's why when I say, when we go travel somewhere, when we go meet these individuals, act as that person, watch. They just think that that's you. Boom. Now you can overcome it. That is the whole topic summed up. And I wanted that as a soundbite for myself, because I as we think about this, as we do this daily show, we're doing it every day. So sometimes we're just speaking off the cuff, and while we do prep a lot for these, and we're gonna get better and better, is what I'm saying.
So I want to share this with you as we're coming to wrap up.
What time is it?
We have 5 minutes till 1.
Okay.
PST.
Cool.
Something I want to share with you guys as we're coming here every day, and we're evolving the format to be one that we not only find so much joy in showing up and serving, but one that is going to serve every one of you who are on in the early stages here. Bill showing up, Les showing up, Marlon showing up, Kyle showing up. So many of you. Thank you for being here. I want to point out that as we're doing this, we want your feedback as to what your favorite parts are and any suggestions that you might have, because we are building the frame now. We are getting better every day, and we have so many topics to talk about. They will go well beyond 365 days, but in these 365 that we're taking you through the journey that Leo and myself have went through financially, mentally, spiritually, physically, every way that we have found successes, and sharing them out with you guys in a way that resonates, and that you who are on here in the early stages and more people who might come in coming days and weeks can start to feel this, to feel the energy we have, the passion we have, and the efforts we put into preparation for this, the thoughts we're sharing, the stories that we want to pull out of of our former days that might relate to something that you're going through. But the real change comes when we can marry our new thought processes, or our designed thought processes, rather than just letting it flow into wherever and winding up in Marion, Kentucky instead of Marion, Illinois. If we can take our thought process and marry that with discipline. Here's where I want to go. Plus discipline equals desired result. And we're here to give you information, most of all, inspire you and to hold you accountable. And definitely keep the feedback coming in. Thanks so much for being here with us in these early stages. And we're going to keep working on the set. We're going to keep getting better every day. And I feel like this is day 15. I do feel like we've massively improved in the last 15 days, Leo. As we're wrapping up here, what have you noticed that's gotten better? Because it excites me as we talk about this. Elizabeth, so good to see you. Thank you for sharing your favorites.
I think we're just becoming more and more us. You know, in the first initial, it's like, okay, we're on a live stream where a bunch of people can watch us as we're talking. Yeah. And now, you know, we've got all these cool gadgets and things, and the boom, bop, you know, all these cool things. I haven't even used this one. But I think we're just getting better at being comfortable. And guys, thank you so much for being here in these beginning stages, because this right here is a story we'll talk about in a couple of years, right? In a couple of years, we'll have, like, this show will have exploded, and it's going to be a whole different space. And me and Andrew, we sat down, we said, okay, the first 30 days is just us massively pouring in and figuring out how the heck to do this, because we have no idea how to do this. We've never done it before. We have so much to share. Yeah. And we know how to break things down into a simple format where you can change your life. But to do it on a live has been super interesting, and
it's fun. And I think it's a discipline for us. It's a new discipline muscle that we're building in the way of knowing, hey, at noon PST every day, 3 p.m. Eastern, we showing up. And I just thank you for also setting your calendars and showing up with us.
Yes. So if you can brew some tea, because we're going to be we brew tea every morning, every morning and every afternoon at noon PST. So brew some tea with us. Sit down. Use this as your mental gym, because you know we spend a lot of time preparing so we can get the brain to understand it and use it. And everything's designed for the right reason. Every word, every experience, every cutoff is all designed to help you become the best version of yourself across those 8 categories of life.
So we need you showing up in the brain gym, because we've been pulling out the 5-pound dumbbells, and we want to get you ready for the 40s, because the 40s are coming soon. That's right. So make sure the brain is fed well and the tea is brewed up.
Cheers.
Cheers. See you all.
Boom,
tomorrow.
Bop,
same
bow,
place,
chicka, wow, wow.
same time. Bye for now, guys.